Welcome or welcome back to Lift You Up Inspiring Health Stories. I'm your host, Tamika Bickham. I'm the founder and chief storyteller of TB Media Group. But for the purpose of this podcast, I am your health and happiness matchmaker. Now, before I introduce you to today's guest, you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Go ahead, hit subscribe on YouTube, turn on those notifications, and connect with me on LinkedIn because I'd love to stay connected with you. Now, it's the holiday season, so there's no better time than this time of year to talk about giving back, especially to those who really need it. So I'm going to introduce you to a nonprofit because you know I love featuring nonprofits at least once a month on this show, called Project Angel Food out of Los Angeles. They give out medically tailored foods to chronically ill individuals, and they do 2,400 meals per day. It's truly incredible. And today's guest, Brad Bessey, started volunteering with them when they started 32 years ago. You're going to hear his story about being an executive producer in a high-powered career in entertainment TV to what he is doing now as the head of communications and talent relations for this nonprofit. We're talking all about purpose and giving back. Our physical, mental, and emotional health is not just a want, it is a need for happy lives and prosperous businesses. Lift You Up is the podcast where we share inspiring health stories from business owners who are fulfilling their purpose to live their healthiest lives and helping you do the same. From former TV reporter to marketing entrepreneur and content creator, I care about sharing stories that matter and stories that connect us. I'm your host, Tamika Bickham, your health and wellness matchmaker. Well, today I'm excited to welcome to the show Brad Bessey, who is, hopefully I have this right, the head of communications for Project Angel Food.
Yeah, head of communications and talent relations, right? Because so much of what I do is enroll celebrities to get involved, and it is great for them and their souls, but it also helps draw attention to the important work of the agency.
Nonprofits have always been close to my heart, and there's always important stories that come out of nonprofit work. So that's also why I wanted to have you on the show and talk about the important work you're doing. So tell me a little bit more about what Project Angel Food does.
I got involved with Project Angel Food actually in 1989 when I was just a kid, like in my early 20s. And it was at the height of the AIDS crisis in Los Angeles. And so many of us were looking around at our friends who were dying at that point of AIDS. And we were so despondent. There was a lot of despair. Every single night of the week, I was in a hospital room holding the hand of someone who was dying, or weekends were filled with memorial services. And Marianne Williamson at that time said, you know, you can either give in to the darkness or be part of the light, be part of the solution. And so we started preparing and delivering meals to our friends and the community, people who were at that point dying of AIDS or living with AIDS. And so much of what the doctors were saying is that it was the malnutrition that they were dying of. So we would pack up in this church kitchen, we'd put together meals. We'd cook spaghetti or whatever we could at that time, and we'd deliver 65, 70. One day we hit 100 meals a day. It was so exciting. And that was the origins of Project Angel Food. So in that was the DNA of delivering meals with compassion and care, and to take care of our, brothers and sisters who at this point were living and dying of AIDS. Fast forward here at another pandemic with COVID, we see the fragility of the healthcare system, especially what that means to people of color, what it means to people who are economically challenged. And Project Angel Food went from feeding those few people that we were feeding in 1989 to today feeding 2,400 men, women, and children every single day,
Wow.
living with HIV/AIDS, congestive heart failure, cancer, and COVID. I mean, we are taking care of people, but we started seeing sort of the fractures in the healthcare system, right? So that people weren't being served, and people who weren't getting good health insurance or didn't have good paying jobs, they were not seeking regular medical attention until it was critical. And then they would find themselves actually seeking care. And those are the people that we are serving, people who are chronically or terminally ill, with medically tailored meals. And medically tailored meals are actually designed to improve health outcomes, right? So if someone has diabetes, they need a different diet plan than someone who has cancer, who needs something else if they can have congestive heart failure. So in our kitchen in Hollywood, we prepare and deliver to 2,400 people a day, now doing over 1 million meals every single year. Each meal plan is designed specifically for those needs. And the beautiful thing about it is that we found that hospitalizations, the Food is Medicine Coalition here in California did a research study, and hospitalizations are reduced by 50% by people who are receiving these medically tailored meals, right? So that's
Oh,
a
wow.
big
That's
improvement.
huge.
And for me, for where I see it, I just know like that hands-on experience of it, the stories, like to have a woman named Candace who has congestive heart failure and tell me that she is like almost giddy. She's almost giddy that she used to spend at least 1 week of every month in the hospital, and she's been on the program for 7 months and said, I've not had to stay in the hospital once. She was so excited about that outcome. And then a client I have named Diane, she has some agency in this, right? So she's learning how to. She is on dialysis 3 times a week. She needs food that's actually medically tailored to help her outcomes, right? And she is actually knows now the sodium content, and she's looking at these vegetables, and she knows what she needs to eat to keep herself on track to sort of combat her diabetes and her kidney failure. So she is working with her dietitian. She's seeing the meal. She knows what she needs to eat. And she says, I'm going to be around for my grandbabies for a long time. And that's what I see when I talk about this medically tailored meals. And our dietitians, they go over the research with me, and that's great. But what I see is the outcomes and personal stories of people that I see.
Absolutely. And 2,400 meals per day is a large number, but it
It's a lot.
started it's a lot. And certainly a long way in what, 30 or so, a
Yeah,
little
32
over
years.
32 years since Project Angel Food started in 1989, or was that when you
Yes.
started volunteering?
No, it's when it started. And when I started volunteering, I was one of the first volunteers. When we look at 2,400 people that we serve every day, that comes out to be about 95,000 meals a week that
Mm.
we're making, a month that we're making. We're doing over, as I mentioned, over 1 million a year. It's just a crazy number. And during the pandemic as well. So what we found is that we used to have 4,700 volunteers every single year in the kitchen, side by side with our chefs, cooking, music playing, having a good time. Companies would have their volunteer, like their employee staff come in, and it was really fueled by 80% of our work was done by volunteers. But with the pandemic, we saw volunteers weren't able to come into the kitchen. We also saw it wasn't safe for our own protocols. And our main mission was to keep people fed during the pandemic, no matter what. I have great admiration for our executive director, who's been a longtime friend. And he came in one day when everyone was just faced with all the fear of what was going on. They're going, oh my gosh, a volunteer group canceled. Oh my gosh, there was a lot of fear. And he said, you know what? No one will ever miss a meal who's a Project Angel Food client. Let's get together and figure out what we're going to do. We can't be hysterical. We have to lead with love. Well, that's what we did. We got together, and miracles, big and small, just happened right and left. And we were
Mm.
able to not only maintain service, but continue service. So it was something really um, daunting, and we we haven't slept in years. So if I get a little emotional, it's because I'm tired. But what we started doing was we just started showing up and always saying yes, because rules were changing so often. What would happen if we weren't able to get to them? So we provided them 3 weeks of shelf stable meals. We provided them an extra week of frozen meals for their freezer, so that we always made sure that they were taken care of. We formed a group of volunteers called Telephone Angels to call in and just do checks. They're not psychologists. They're not doing official social work. They're just calling person to person to say, hey, how's it going? Because that isolation was even magnified. They were already feeling isolated because they were critically ill. Now it was being magnified. So we were able to get through that. And we also hired then people who would have been unemployed in the restaurant business. We hired them all to start working in our kitchen. So we started this last May integrating volunteers back into the system. But I have to tell you, it was a sort of a culture shock because they were used to coming in, dicing, slicing. Oh, what's going on? What's going on with your daughter? It was a little slower pace. Now I've got all these professional chefs, and we've got so much to do. It's really different. So we had to take a moment to figure out how to integrate volunteers back into our kitchen service, where they could have a meaningful participation, where they actually were contributing to the creation and getting these meals to folks, but also didn't sort of slow down production with their generosity of spirit and service.
Obviously, you have a lot of passion for what you do, and there's a deep rooted purpose in what you do. And I love talking about purpose on this show because I think that whether there's those positive things that happen in life, but even more so the hard times, the challenges that we overcome tend to guide us in in our purpose and the path that we take in life. So I'm curious because I know this hasn't always been your career. As you mentioned,
Right.
this is where you started as a volunteer, but in your career, you were a producer.
Mm.
So tell me about that, like happening on the other side of things. You're volunteering
Sure.
for, over 30 years with Project Angel Food. Um, and how that ends up transitioning from you being a producer in a totally different field
Right.
to now working for Project Angel Food.
Sure. I'll tell you, it was actually really pretty intentional. I
Okay.
didn't always volunteer. I volunteered and then I got very busy with my career. And in many
Okay.
ways, I define my self so directly with the success I had in television. But there was always a sort of a detach that I had to do. There was a gnawing sort of feeling that I had that it wasn't enough, or what was the purpose, or why was I so defined by that job and the trappings of that job? Like, why did it matter to me? What rest that someone would like, they would hear my name and immediately the best table would open up, or what those sorts of things
Mm-hmm.
that I found were defining me as successful were at a disconnect from a soul level of what I viewed success, right? So I felt like, in some ways, as my career expanded and grew and I was successful at it, I became, I had to work harder to return to me. I had to work harder to stay grounded in a part of me that was of love and of service, not necessarily of ego and capitalism and taking and making every tenth of a ratings point work so well, or every right. So it was a really big game of compare and contrast. So when I didn't have those things, then I started to focus on, who do I want to be in this next chapter of my life. I didn't do it alone. I was fortunate enough to work with an amazing life coach and author named Cheryl Richardson. In that process, I was able to really hear the calling of my inner voice that told me I was up to big things, and those big things would be measured differently. Those big things would be measured in contribution to others. So just being in that space of openness, and going back to school, because why not in the 50s go back to school? I went back to finish my undergrad at Cal State Northridge, and fell in love with the conversation of social justice and communication being the fulcrum of change. And so I continued on with my master's degree, which is, I'm still doing that, by the way. And in that, I would find that I would be called to do a television project, but it would be conflicting with my schedule, and I'd be conflicted, and there'd be, what am I going to do? And about the same time, my friend Richard Ayub, who's the executive director of Project Angel Food, said it's our 30th anniversary, and we're looking for a way to connect with bigger celebrities. If I were able to give you a small consulting fee, and they really did put not in not-for-profit, but they they gave me a small consulting fee, and I said, you know what, that's enough to justify me not saying yes to these other projects, and it gave me some breathing room to continue with my studies, and some breathing room then to work, reconnect with Project Angel Food, and that all happened, and it all went really smoothly, and I created their first telethon, Lead with Love. I just was so humbled that in 4 weeks I got 61 huge celebrities to participate, and a little bit different than me previously and me then was a humility I think I had about it. I was grateful. I didn't expect anyone to say yes because of me, because I demanded it, because of my ratings. I didn't ego my way into those bookings. I reached into those bookings with filled with heart, and they people responded because of that. So after that, I went off to launch a digital show for a company in Silicon Valley. And when I, in that 6 weeks that I was doing that, I really missed Project Angel Food, and they missed me. And they created this position, now the director of uh, communications and talent relations. And I've been able to step in and be there full time when I'm not, picking up my son from school, or studying for a test or writing a paper for my grad school.
So just so that I'm clear, that telethon is what you created, or in that 4 week period is what you did for Project Angel Food.
Oh, yeah, and yes, Project Angel Food had the opportunity from Channel 5 here, KTLA.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Listen, we've got a couple hours on a Saturday night in 4 weeks, like in July. If you want it, we'll give it to you. Maybe you could use it for a fundraising event."
Got it.
And
Okay.
we said, well, let's do a telethon. And that's where I said, you know what, we've been leading with love. Let's just call it Lead with Love.
Yeah.
And so that's now become an annual tradition. Our first telethon, we raised over $700,000. The second one we just did in July raised like $1.2 million. So we're really grateful to have had the opportunity. I think it comes back to letting your soul lead you, and in important moments, right? And I think that no matter who is watching you and watching this, and who your audience is, I think that no matter where you are, you can get value of this lesson that I've learned, and that is, you'll get instincts or sort of these sort of soul hits, and it's important to honor those and act on them, even if you don't understand them. I'll tell you a recent example of that, and that is last December, maybe it was early December. I was in a market, and I saw in the tabloids a picture of Lori Loughlin, who was going through the challenges of what she was going through. At that moment, I thought, I bet I could be of help to her. Like, I just thought that. So I reached out to her publicist. I said, "Listen, I'm sure she's getting out of jail." Oh, that's what it was. She was in jail at the time. And I said, "I know she's getting out of jail, and I read that she's got community service to do, and I'm sure she has other things already lined up. But if not, I've been able to create a safe space for people like Meghan and Harry and other celebrities to be here. I think I could create a safe space for her to do the community service. She could do some good, if it works for her." It was that simple. And so Lori and I talked several times over the holidays, and she came in and did her community service. And I got to see a side of her that was really about giving and caring about others. And after she finished her community service, which was before Valentine's Day, she continues to volunteer. And it's a beautiful to see her compassion and her caring for these clients is a wonderful thing. To follow those instincts, I think, has led to me to a path of service. It's really awesome. And I don't know where those next hits will come or where they'll lead me, but I do know that it's my responsibility to stay grounded, so that I can, and quiet enough in my own head so I can hear those voices as they guide me.
And, and you kind of answered the next question that I had, because you mentioned that there kind of being that disconnect between that career success and that success in your soul. So do
Mm.
you feel like those are aligned now?
I very much think that they're aligned. I still have opportunities to that come my way to possibly produce again, and I don't know that I don't know that I'm done producing, but I do know that I am really selective about what I say yes to and the meetings I say yes to and who it is that I choose to or would choose to work for and what the content might be, right? So I feel like if my life continued where it is right now, I would be perfectly happy if this was the next 10 years of my life. But I
Mhm.
also feel I'm in a much more grounded place that when I hear those opportunities, I can actually use um, some discretion. I'm not chasing anything. And so, from a place where I'm centered, I'm able to hear opportunities and evaluate them in a way that is more thoughtful and no, and I can say no. I felt like I needed to executive produce a national talk show or another morning show or another magazine show. I needed to be that executive producer on that national level for me to actually have value for people to see, out there. You've got to see that I'm the man. And I feel like I don't really care so much whether people see me that way any longer. I just know that I feel like if I translate everything that I do, which I'm able to, into service, and I look at what my work at Entertainment Tonight, I'm really proud of a lot of the groundbreaking that I did by standing in my truth. So it wasn't like all or nothing, but I had to really fight and go to Mr. Moonves himself in order to get Kevin Frazier to be the first African American host of Entertainment Tonight. I had to, I had to stand in the drift a lot of times of things that were like in the industry. It's all coded, I think, sometimes the racism or the sexism. It's all coded in other language, but it exists. And so I look at time after time how I sort of stood in the drift of that. And I'm really proud of the opportunities I created and how thoughtful I was in retrospect of like the observations. Like I didn't really think of it at the time, like that it was such a statement that I was handling. I was hiring a transgender woman to be a reporter on Entertainment Tonight. I just did it because it like felt right. But all of those things were groundbreaking, or saying no to overtly sexist content. Like I stopped covering Maxim magazine because I thought that it just did nothing but objectify women. So those sorts of things, little by little, I actually do feel I can look back on a career and say, hey, I really made a difference by the way,
Right.
by the thoughtfulness in which I approached the content for those shows. But I also, in the nature, gave into the beast of chasing the latest story. But I do think where I am right now, I feel like I'm much more comfortable and confident in my own skin. And I'm from that place of personal empowerment. I'm able to make decisions that actually have, I think, a bigger impact than if I was so constrained by worrying about what people thought about me.
I'm curious, going back to 1989 when you first decided to start volunteering with Project
Yeah.
Angel Food, it sounds like contribution has always been part of, who you are.
Mm.
Was there a particular reason that Project Angel Food, kind of called you to volunteer, or was there a specific experience that connected you to this nonprofit?
To have the lived experience of the AIDS epidemic in Los Angeles, and probably the same in New York or San Francisco, where the world at large at that point had said it would call it things like the gay plague, and this was God. This was God sort of, fortunately, I had strong in a spiritual connection um, of my own from my youth, which was not my parents telling me to go to church, but me actually grounding myself, choosing to go to church and choosing to have a relationship with God. I knew that when the people were telling me that I was evil and wrong and had sinned against God and God didn't love me, I knew enough from my own experience that that wasn't true. So I knew that these were people that were manipulating sort of a greater spiritual sort
Right.
of, don't talk for God. God can talk for himself.
Right. Right.
But I felt like living in that area, it was just like the least I could do. Like it's like to be able to deliver meals to people. And I also, at that point, I still do this today, is I hold people not as their illness, but I see beyond their illness and hold them in their humanity. So I have one client who is a jazz singer and used to perform at different clubs, right? And so we'll talk about those things, and we'll talk about her performances, and we'll talk about music, and we'll talk about uh, some of those things, and she lightens up. So for those few minutes that we're interacting, she's not a woman whose life was derailed by cancer 2 years ago. She's not that woman. She's able to be in the spotlight, literally be in the spotlight again, and hold on to part of her that sometimes she forgets because she's dealing with illness. So I think that sort of spiritual grounding is what I did in the early days of being at Project Angel consciously. When I'm dealing with people and I'm thinking, like literally consciously thinking, you are not your disease. The only thing real here is love. And I think that's like coming back to the agency, where the agency has grown so much. And when you actually look at its medically tailored meals, and you look at the source of the operation, and you look at, we used to just have a handful of mostly volunteers and a handful of employees. And now we have 69, 70 employees who do this work. Right now it's an operation. There's actually an HR department there hiring that, right? It would be easy, Project Angel Food doesn't do it, but it would be easy then to see the operation as an operation, which you have to handle all those things. But I was able to experience as an extension of love. And so from that level, I'm able to bring that into the DNA of the company, that every day, what we do, no matter how it looks, or no matter what, if you're doing payroll or you're doing this, or you're making all those meals, it's actually all an extension of love.
Those with chronic illness tend to be isolated and are often alone, which can be even more challenging, I'm sure, especially around the holidays. Can you talk about just where Project Angel Food kind of comes in during this season and why it's so important?
Oh, sure. You know what? Here's what I thought of when you were asking the question is just we have a toy drive, a gift drive that we're giving all of the children of our chronically ill clients presents and gifts. It's not that mom and dad don't want to give them gifts, but literally these people are like 97% of them are living at or below that poverty level. So we think holistically of the client. And so we notice that some of our clients are sharing their or giving some of their meals to their kids. So we start providing all the kids with breakfast. And now over the holidays, we're providing them with toys and gifts. And then we'll make sure that everyone has special holiday meals as well. And we just are really we just surround them with love and kindness and compassion. This holiday, it's the thing physically, the sort of material consequence of inflation is that it costs us more to put together the meals that we do. We use all fresh ingredients. We use the best ingredients we can, and everyone feels what it is like to be in the grocery store and go shopping going, I'm paying this for an avocado. Right?
Right.
So we're feeling that in a big way. So I think we're really relying on everyone's generosity this holiday season to make sure that our clients, that they're critically ill people, can actually um, can have those meals. And then we also lean in, as we do year round, but lean into especially that they feel special during the holidays. And we make sure we have those calls going out, and cards, and on the people's birthdays, by the way, that we give them
Mm-hmm.
a special bag that's decorated with little tchotchkes and goodies and lipsticks and things like that on their birthdays. And we did a big thing with Veterans Day as well. And I happened to be delivering to one of the veterans. And just to be honored, I just said, sir, we just want to give you this little token just to thank you for your service. Just to acknowledge someone like that was so meaningful. He was like, so touched that someone would think to honor him for his service, right? So I think that even though I experience that on a daily basis by being in this work, I think that for your audience, as we go about our day, just to take that moment to acknowledge someone is so important, because it will stay with them. It will be a treasure. It will be the gift, and that's what we try to do this holiday season.
Absolutely. Love that. And lastly, I always like to ask for a health tip, happiness tip, a wellness tip. I know offline prior to starting hitting record, you had mentioned your meditation routine. It could be that or something else. Just something that you would say has helped in your kind of everyday, kind of day to day, with whether staying grounded or just part of your health and wellness routine.
Great, thank you. I do think that for me, having a grounded meditation practice is really, really important. And if I am working on something and I blow it off, my day is, I feel those consequences. It's my day to get grounded. That contexting that day has created a day that's been much more joyful. The actual material work that I'm doing is probably the same, but I can control how I show up for those circumstances. And that's what that meditation allows me to do every morning.
I love that. That's a great tip. It's funny. The interview I had just before you as well, I asked for her health tip, and she said, setting an intention for the day.
Mm,
So
that's a
I'm loving this theme.
yes. That's really good. That's awesome. I love the theme, and I love that you're having this conversation with people, because I think there's so much value in people having conversations, right? Phil Donahue was talking about what, in a retrospective on his career, was talking about how his show was so impactful. And he
Mm-hmm.
said it's because it was the stories that people tell, and connecting people with our life stories. So and what I do know is that there's a divine connection to all of this. There's a reason why we connected. As people find you in your content, there's a reason why they're finding it. I know that there will be someone who hears this and is in a job that isn't right for them,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll think, oh my gosh, I need to really think about, what is my purpose, and is this serving my purpose or serving my ego? And
Mm-hmm.
they'll come up with that because they found you and I having this conversation today.
Absolutely. And thanks for that. And hey, that's what we do, right? We're storytellers. And, regardless of, sometimes those stories led us to kind of feed the beast. But the beautiful thing in stories is that ultimately they do connect us and bring us together.
Yes.
So before we go, I, of course, want to ask how people can support Project Angel Food, find you online, social media, all the places, so we can make sure to link to all that below.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much. Angelfood.org is the best way to find us. That's where we have a list of all the programs, how people can get involved, volunteer, donate, and actually see what we're up to. One thing I'm really excited about is we've just launched a Native American with Diabetes project, where we're actually looking at how our medically tailored meals can actually improve health outcomes, and then pairing people with nutritional counseling and with buddies actually can help their mental health. And to serve that underserved population, I'm really excited to begin this 2-year project. So people can find out all things like that at the website, or they can find us on Instagram at Project Angel Food, or they can also find us on Twitter at Proj Angel Food. So PROJ Angel Food. I guess Project Angel Food was too long, or it was taken at the time. But that's where they can find us on Twitter. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to throw out some handles there.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure it's nice and easy and linked below so everyone can find it there and easily learn more about you and also support you during this, especially during this holiday season, all year long, but especially during the holiday season as well.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Brad about his story and Project Angel Food, the important work they are doing in the community, as well as his helpful health tip about meditation and setting intentions. I loved all of the information he had to share, so make sure you find all those links he mentioned down below in the show notes, and truly enjoy your holiday season. I appreciate you coming back here each and every week. I appreciate the support. So if also you haven't done so already and you're new here, you might be, so welcome. Make sure to connect with me. All my information is below in the show notes. I'm on LinkedIn, which is where I'd love for you to connect. Subscribe on YouTube, turn on notifications. I'm also all the other places. And hey, turn on notifications so you know to come back and watch each and every new episode every week. We don't take a week off. So until I see you back next week, which should be, if I'm correct, in 2022, I'll see you then. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy.